Okay, I'm in my office and I have to make this video because I need to be working on a paper, and I just watched Peter's video like an hour ago, and I've been like thinking about this stuff nonstop, and I've written so much in my journal just like with ideas, and I just need to get them out. And I was like, maybe I should write a blog post, but then I'm like, that will take forever. And now we have this channel, and this is what this channel is supposed to be for. So I'm just gonna read what I have and then go off on it. Okay, so I want to talk about environmentalism. So in Peter's video, he talked about like mental energy and mental burden. And that like got me thinking about environmentalism, because like I have recently started like identifying as a vegetarian, kind of, and like I try and be low waste. And like if you want to know more about low waste living, Kaylee and Cassie have both been making really good videos about this recently, which I will link. But like, so thinking about environmentalism is really hard, and it's a process, just like thinking about anything like racism or like able-bodied privilege or gender politics. Like those, you can't just like sit someone down and be like, okay, understand this now, and like start thinking about it in your everyday life. It's a process, and you have to sort of understand it over a period of time to be able to absorb it and think critically about it and analyze it and sort of absorb it. And I feel that's true about all kinds of inequality or discrimination, which is what like environmentalism is about, and it's often not framed that way, but like that's what it is. It's shifting a burden to people in the global south or to people in the future who haven't created this, and that's creating inequality. You know, like people in the global south are feeling the burden of climate change much more intensely, even though they're not contributing to it at all the same way that people in the global north and in the west are. So where am I? How to think? Oh yeah. So yeah. It's inequality, and it's really hard to think about. And in some ways, I feel like environmentalism is the hardest form of inequality to think about, because you have to perpetuate it in everyday living. Like with racism, you can understand systematic racism, and you can understand that it's happening every day, but you don't have to personally acknowledge that you're contributing to it and perpetuating it every single day. Whereas with like environmentalism, and specifically environmental inequality, that's something that you have to do. And it's such a hard thing to think about, and it's taken me years to be able to think about it in the way that like morally I felt obligated to. Yeah. So like with racism, for example, like you can sit someone down and you can explain, you know, this is housing discrimination, this is wealth inequality, this is that, this is this, whatever. And you can sort of explain how it has happened and is happening. But with environmental inequality, that's not really possible. You can't sit someone down and in 12 hours they understand how environmental inequalities work, and how it affects them and other people, and the kind of people that it affects, because it's everywhere, and it's like so enormous. Not that like racism isn't, but racism, I feel like there's some core principles that you can understand, and then you can sort of understand the problems with it and like ways to address it in your everyday life. Whereas environmentalism, that's so hard to do. Like you can't just sit someone down and say like, okay, now think about the underpaid miner who mined the phosphate that, you know, fertilized the corn that, you know, was fed to the beef that is now in your hamburger. Like that's insane. Or like sit someone down and be like, okay, now think about exactly how much petroleum is in the jeans that you're wearing from H&M right now. And it's just, there's like so many levels to it, and it's not something you can just sit someone down and think about. It takes years and years of like constant critical thought every single day to eventually get to a place where you can like bear to think about it every day, and it's so hard and so exhausting. What does this say? Oh, yeah. Yeah, and like on some level, I've been guilty of this, and like on some level I still think it's true, that like because we live in this like macro-capitalistic globalized society, individual choices have no real, what's the word? Like, you don't have responsibility. That's not the word, but like, you know what I mean. Like you're not responsible for your choices and the impacts your choices make. And I still think that's true on some level, but like there's like some kind of trade-off between the two. Because like on some level, people still have responsibility for the choices they're making, but on the other level, they don't have responsibility for the systems that their choices are contributing to. And I don't know. This has been a really hard thing for me because, especially like when I'm talking to people that like are close to me, and they'll like ask my opinion on something, and I feel like I can't just go off on this like evangelizing tangent about, you know, how important it is to think about the environmental consequences of their actions. But it's also something that I've had to reconcile with myself, that I have to think about in everything I do, especially because of the work that I'm doing. Because I can like look at effects and understand the causes, and understand that on some level, on some micro level, I'm contributing to that. And I'm just having a really hard time finding a good balance between like speaking up about it and like hurting people's feelings. Because it's like, it's not something I expect everyone to think about because it's so enormous and so difficult to think about. But I also think that it's important to talk about and to be aware about. But it's just like, it takes such a large amount of energy and effort and critical thought to be able to think about it in a critical and comprehensive way. I don't know. These are just my thoughts, and I really need to write my paper, so I needed to get this out. Okay, I hope this made any sense. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.